Hey everybody, it is the top of the first Fearless Hour today, and I thought we could talk about fear. And there's all different kinds of fear. It affects us in all different kinds of ways, and we don't always know when it's fear affecting us or when we are making those decisions based on we call freedom, but based on a place that is from a good place, from a place of you, you at your in your higher self space, which is kind of what freedom is you at your best, you in your highest space, you acting out of courage or trust or compassion, and not acting in out of fear. And it's not always easy to discern where you are, because not all of us have that same level of awareness around our fear or around how it affects us and speaks to us and makes us feel about ourselves and others. And so sometimes we may think that we are making a decision from that higher space, one that makes sense, that's rational, that's, we're stuck in our head being analytical, or we're going straight from our feelings. And that's not necessarily always a good place to go from. So how do we know? How do we discern between the two? And there's lots of different tools that I have that I could share on how you could discern between the fear or the freedom, which is what we call it in fearless living. Discern between, the voice that tells you no and the voice that says, what do you think? So that's one way that you can tell the difference. Some people might describe your voice of freedom as your intuition, or that still small voice, or that knowing that we can kind of get sometimes, our gut, so if you kind of think of it in that way. But sometimes the way our fear can trip us up is that we get a feeling because a situation triggers us to remember a situation that was similar, maybe didn't involve the same people or didn't involve the same factors, but it's similar enough for our fear to go, whoa, what's going on here? We've been here before, we don't want to go back. And so we decide, okay, we're not going to involve ourselves here. We're not going to take this opportunity. We're not going to interact with this person, whatever it might be, but it's fear. And it might, if we're not clear on which one is in charge at that moment, then we might miss out on something, miss out on an opportunity, miss out on a new friend or a collaboration, or, just any kind of opportunity, adventure, something good, because our fear is like, oh, this feels like, this looks like, this smells like something we've been through before, and that didn't go well. So let's not go that way again. Our voice of freedom is more of like, hey, this is a different person. This has different, factors going on in it. Let's see how it plays out. If it starts going a way that is no longer in alignment with us, then we'll walk away. If someone shows us that they can't be trusted, then we'll say we don't want to be that person's, interacting with that person. Our voice of freedom is more like keeping us safe, but keeping us safe in an expansive way. It wants us to step out of our comfort zone. It wants us to try new things. It wants us to believe in ourselves. and trust ourselves and, step out into the unknown. And so that is very opposite than our fear. So it's just a matter of checking that. Where are we? Are we in the fear? Are we in the freedom when we make those decisions, so that we know that it's not fear running our lives, it's us. All right, we are at 10 after the hour. So I will pause this and I will most likely see you at the end for some more mastermind. Hello, we are back at the bottom of the second Fearless Action Hour, and I am here with Terry Ann. And what, Terry Ann, would you like to mastermind about being fearless?
Well, I'm not sure. There are a lot of things that I could be more fearless around.
Yeah. Well, I was talking earlier about discerning the difference between fear and freedom, and how we can know if fear is running our life and making decisions for us. And so do you have anything on that you would like to share?
Well, I was sharing this morning on my action hour with Nancy. We were talking about, moving out in courage when things come up in our lives. And I was telling her that she was asking me how I made some decisions, as I went along in my lengthy life. And I was saying that when I retired, I think that was not a courageous thing to do, but it was a fearful thing to do. And that at that point in my life, my actions were being determined from fear, not from freedom. And that it may or may not have been the best decision for me to make at that time, because I was making it out of fear. And yet I wouldn't be where I am today if I hadn't made that decision. So we were just talking about how moving forward in courage is totally different from, moving forward in fear. And I think that part of the equation that we ended up really talking about was expectations versus intentions. That when we move out and make decisions based upon our own expectations or the expectations others have of us, generally that's a fearful action. The fear of being rejected, the fear of not being good enough, the fear of failing, whatever that fear is. And that when we can navigate our lives using intentions with the mindset of practicing and not being tied to specific outcomes, we move forward in freedom rather than making decisions and moving ahead based on fear. So that was a good discussion in terms of, fear being expectations, freedom being intentions. And how do you use the intentions then to take those incremental steps towards freedom, towards your dreams, towards your goals, towards your vision, your purpose, whatever it is. And how can you recognize or be aware of the self-destructive nature of expectations?
Yeah, I love that. So I think, sorry, my daughter just came in. So I think that expectations definitely get us in a bind, and that's one way we can use intentions to support us in making decisions now as well. Are these decisions in alignment with our intention? Are they in alignment with our values? Are they in alignment with our purpose or our mission? There's lots of ways that we can check ourselves to see if we are in fear or freedom when we're making that decision. And expectations is another way. You know, do I have expectations of myself in this? Is there only one way it can turn out? You know, for me to be okay with it? You know, am I open to possibilities and opportunities within this choice? You know, check, you know, really check what we're expecting of ourselves, but also, yes, what we're expecting of others. You know, if I do this, then that person will do this. You know, whatever, you know, whatever those expectations might be, and use that as a way to check, are we doing something in fear or freedom as well? So I love that. I think that really adds to the support in discerning between fear and freedom. Another way that we can use that to know if fear is running our life, or if our choices are being made in a more intuition, freedom-based place, so that we can trust ourselves, right, in making that decision and moving forward.
Yeah, I think that, you know, when you look at the wheel of fear, which we share with people from Fearless Living, is that that awareness of the fact that you're making your choices based upon, you know, an expectation, or based upon the feeling that you're not good enough, or, you know, whatever you're making those decisions on, and then you engage in self-destructive behaviors. I think that's a really big clue. And when I retired, that could have been out of freedom, and it could have been a self-affirming behavior. But since I did it out of fear, it was more of a self-destructive behavior, because I could have chosen to stay in my position another 5 years, and I would have made a lot more money in my retirement. But because I just was really emotionally encompassed by fear and expectations and disappointment, which means I had an expectation, I just walked away, which was a way of deflecting my responsibility, deflecting what might have been a bad decision financially. I just walked away. And I mean, it's worked out all right, but it would have been you know, the outcome could have been very different if I had made that decision based on faith and trust and freedom, rather than on fear and disappointment and a feeling of frustration.
Yeah. Well, and if you would have stayed in that place, you wouldn't be where you are now either.
Well, no, and I didn't have the tools I have now. If I could go back, you know, if you could rewind and go back to that moment, and I would have had all the tools and strategies that I've learned in Fearless Living, I could have negotiated and you know, gone through that landscape more successfully. But you don't get a do-over. And so I wouldn't be where I am now. I wouldn't have may not have even accepted Fearless Living and coaching in my life if I had not had that experience. So it's like, again, faith that our journey is the right journey for us at the right moment to get us where we are and where we would like to be.
Yeah. Well, thank you. We are at the top of the hour, so we will pause.
Okie dokie.
So we've been talking a lot about voice of fear and voice of freedom. And I think that there's a lot of voices out in the world today, and we're not always sure whose voice to listen to. And there's people that we easily relate to. There's people that inspire us. There's people that we don't relate to and they're not our person. You know, for me, Rhonda Britton, when I first heard Rhonda Britton, I knew that she was speaking my language, right? I describe it as my spirit speaks the same language as her spirit. And so I jumped right in and I learned all I could, and I'm still learning from her. I'm still engaged in fearless living and practicing and wanting to be better at it. And, you know, who are those voices for you? Who are those voices where you hear them and you know that they are speaking to your spirit, they're speaking to your soul, and that what they're saying is exactly what you're needing to hear? And how do you make sure that you are hearing those voices, that you are getting exposed to those voices? You know, what type of habits do you have? You know, and then on the flip side of that, what voices are you letting in that it would be better if you didn't, right? What are those voices that you're listening to that aren't good for you? And maybe it's an actual person, and maybe it's someone you can't get away from. But how can you practice letting what they say not affect you and not stick and not get in? You know, I've learned how to kind of let things just, you know, go in one ear and out the other, or roll off my back, or however you want to say it. I've gotten pretty good at that. And so it definitely wasn't at first. It's been a practice, and there are still some times where someone says something and it definitely does hit me, and I take it in and I stew over it and question myself and all of that. But I have, through practice, gotten a lot better at just letting those things roll. But, you know, really ask yourself, what are those voices that you have available to you that you could listen to more often? And what are those voices that you have that are not supportive, that you can lessen the access they have to you, or practice letting it roll off so that it's not sticking to you. It's not something that's weighing on you, or shifting your beliefs or energy. And, you know, it's not just that inner voice, it's those voices outside of us as well that we need to be mindful of, right? Because when fear speaks to fear, nothing good is going to happen. But when freedom speaks to fear, then fear gets really, really mad. And if you can stay in freedom, then you can leave the situation unscathed. So it's practicing staying in that place, staying in that that higher vibration, which is freedom, and not letting the fear of others take us to a place we don't want to be. Take us to a place where fear is then again in charge and is running our lives. But staying in freedom, staying in that higher vibration, and they may come at you with their fear, but they are not going to make you change from where you are. And that's all practice. And there's lots of tools that can support you with that, such as intentions is a big one, but also things that just strengthen you, like acknowledgements, strengthen your positivity, and seeing the world for you, like gratitudes. And these are all things that you can use to support you on a daily basis, to kind of have that shield, protection against fear, as well as seeing others' innocence And that goes for yourselves too, seeing your own innocence and seeing the innocence of others, and knowing that when they're coming at you with their fear, they're in fear. And it's their fear talking. It's not them. It's their fear. And so realizing that sometimes we say things that we wish we hadn't, and we act sometimes ways that we wish we hadn't. And, you know, our fear runs our lives every once in a while, sometimes more than not. And if we can have that, see our own innocence in that, then it helps us to see the innocence of others as well. And just know that pretty much everybody is trying to do the best they can, and not out there intentionally trying to hurt people. So that's what I got to share with you. I'm going to hit the pause and we'll go into our third fearless hour, and I'll be back at the end. All right, we are back at the bottom of the third fearless hour. And I was thinking we could, if you can hear my kids, those are my kids. That's what that noise is. We've been talking about discerning the difference between fear and freedom, and different ways we can do that by checking our expectations of ourselves or of others. You know, checking in, just really becoming aware of what's going on with ourselves. And is it not feeling right because our fear is saying it's like something that already happened, or is it not feeling right because our intuition is telling us it's not right? So really learning how to discern between fear and freedom. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the fact that if we are listening to fear and making choices in fear, that is okay if that's where we are. But the thing that needs to come along with it is awareness that that's what we're doing. It's when we choose to act in fear and we are unaware that it is fear that is motivating our choices, that's when it's a problem. So we might be having a bad day and we choose to get some ice cream or veg on the couch, or not do our exercise or over exercise, or whatever it is that we do to self-sabotage and not take care of ourselves, and those things that we do when we just don't care anymore, right? It's okay to be there. Everyone is there some point, probably multiple times a day. But it's, what are we going to do when we want to get out of that? How are we going to raise that vibration back up? How are we going to shift that energy? How are we going to get back on our wheel of freedom and stop spinning on our wheel of fear? So how are we going to transition back in to what we want to be doing, and what is in alignment with what we believe and value, and that is a part of our purpose? So don't feel the need to beat yourself up if you are doing things or saying things that are being determined by fear. It happens. It happens to all of us. And you know, allow yourself to see your humanity. Allow yourself to not be perfect, because nobody is. Okay? I don't care how hard you try. You are not going to ever be perfect. Not even close. We're not, that's not what this life is about. This life is about practicing, and this life is about learning. And those are the things that we need to be doing on a daily basis, not trying to be perfect. Hey, LT is in the house. So when we find ourselves being motivated by fear, making choices out of fear, what can we do to shift ourselves into being more proactive? And there's lots of things that we can do. The most common ones are pause and breathe. Become aware of what's going on. Why are you upset? Or why are you making the choices that you're making or saying the things that you're saying? Why? What triggered you? Or if you don't want to know why, just have something in your back pocket that you can pull out and do whenever. Smile. There are studies that show if you smile, it chemically changes your brain. I don't know how. I just know there is a study. And there's lots of things that you can do to support yourself. Take a drink of water, get up and do a dance, you know, take a walk. There's all different kinds of things that we can do to shift our energy out of that place where we feel like blah, or we're putting ourselves down, or we're disappointed in ourselves or disappointed in someone else. Anytime we find ourselves in fear or being motivated by fear, we can pause and we can shift into something else. And that might be writing an acknowledgement or stating a gratitude or calling a friend or any of the other things that I already suggested. But those are the things that we can do to shift ourselves out and back into a place where we want to be grounded, feeling authentic, and all those kinds of things. So LT, do you have anything that you want to add from the part of this conversation that you came in on?
I don't. I just was going to say that my go-to is almost always to, like, I'll call my best friend.
Yeah.
Because so we've been friends for, God, I don't know, probably 15 years. And we're so opposite that we found a quote that between the two of us, we got tattooed together. And it's she's always the one who's more like run with your instincts, like, you know, not instincts, impulses. That's what I'm trying to say. And I'm more the one that's like, got to be a responsible adult, you know, like these are the reasons why we shouldn't do that. And so like I'm trying to think which part of the quote comes first, but anyway, it's you be the wings that keep my head in the clouds, and I'll be the anchor to keep your feet on the ground. So I have the anchor to be the feet, keep your feet on the ground, and she's got the wings to keep my head in the clouds. And there's been so many times where, like, you know, even just a different perspective, because we are so different in that aspect, you know, just a different perspective makes you see things differently or think about things differently. And, you know, not always. There's times when there's things that I bounce off from her and she's like, she's right on spot with what I said, or, you know, what my initial thoughts were. And it either it does one of two things. Like I said, it gives you a different perspective to think of, or it solidifies your thoughts.
Yeah, having good people on your team to support you is a really proactive thing for you to have. Having those venting partners, accountability buddies, you know, just people that you can count on at any time in any moment to have your back, or you know, help you with information or experience or whatever it might be. We call them fear buster teams because they help bust your fear. But anybody you have on your team is definitely a great resource for you to go to help you shift that energy and move on to making those decisions from a better place. So thanks for being with us in the Fearless Action Hours. I'm going to pass it over to LT for build and I'm going to stop the recording.